So the few, the proud, who have, the tired, fair enough, fair enough. So I'm really excited to be doing an Ask the Rabbi session. Obviously, if I don't know the answer to something, I will say I don't know. And because I am a curious person, I will look up the answer and get back to you. I know all y'all, so yeah, I will get back to you with the answer.
I think I misunderstood. I thought this was like a game show, Stump the Rabbi.
Stump the Rabbi, yeah. You know, fair enough. I'm okay with being grilled. So Janice has a microphone that can be passed around so that people at home can hear the questions, but I can also relay questions. And we have one question from someone who was not feeling up to coming back, but was very curious why we don't blow shofar on Shabbat. So the reason for this in the Mishnah is originally if Rosh Hashanah fell on Shabbat, you would blow the shofar in the temple, but you would not blow it in the outlying areas. And so when there's no temple, you don't blow it there. And there's also later sources start to say there's a concern, well, what if you're not sure about the blowing of the shofar and you need to check with someone? We don't want you running around with your shofar on Shabbat asking this person or that person. The only mitzvah for which you are allowed to violate Shabbat in all kinds of ways, crazy ways, including carrying on Shabbat, but even including you are allowed to make charcoal to then make a fire, is Brit Milah. If a baby needs circumcision on Shabbat and you don't want to put off that mitzvah, you are allowed to make charcoal to create the knife that you are going to use. It is crazy, the leniency that they give for that one mitzvah. But for everything else, they're like, no, you can't carry. So I am curious if people brought questions that have been burning. Dina, please. Do I use the mic?
Not really, but no one will hear me.
Fair enough.
And there's a teaching before the question.
Ooh.
So the word is dichotomy. The general usage in English for dichotomy is opposites. So the opposite of hot is cold. The opposite of black is white. The opposite of male used to be female. But in logic, the real meaning of dichotomy is something mutually exclusive but all-encompassing when you have the dichotomy. If you have hot and cold, there are degrees. Everything that is not hot is not necessarily cold. In a real dichotomy, the opposite of black is not black. The opposite of hot is not hot. So, if that's true, then I want to know about the dichotomy of kosher versus not kosher. So,
what do you want to know about
all right,
it?
so here's
That's a
the
very
thing.
broad topic.
All right, so here's the thing. If the dichotomy is something is either kosher or it's not kosher, my question becomes, is not kosher automatically treif? That's my question.
Interesting. Okay.
And now I'll tell you why I brought it up.
Okay.
I had my tallis cleaned recently,
Uh-huh.
and it's not a wool tallis, so the strings are not wool. They're very slippery, and when I got it back, I had to count the knots because some of the knots had come undone. So when I got my tallis back, it was not kosher. Was it treif?
So, so in English, we have this understanding of kosher and not kosher. But in Hebrew, there's a difference between something that is treif, which literally means torn, like a torn animal is the epitome of something that is not kosher and can't be made kosher. But we also have the category of pasul, of something that is temporarily or permanently unfit for use, but could potentially be made kosher again. So kosher doesn't fit a dichotomy in Hebrew the way it does in English, I think is the answer to the question.
Okay, so it's still kosher or not kosher, but not kosher can either be permanently not kosher or temporarily not kosher.
Right, that for ritual objects in particular, something is not necessarily treif, it may be restorable to a condition.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, that was a great question. Other,
Actually, I have a question.
please.
And I'll just keep it.
Yeah.
I love the last paragraph of the Elena,
Uh-huh.
but I wonder, I have trouble with some of the opening lines, and I'm wondering what you think about that and how we might sort of deal with that. The particularism of it.
So the opening lines of the Elenu in general, or the opening lines of the final paragraph?
No, the opening line, well, after the first line. Shalom, the two lines, shalom.
Shelo asanu kigoye
Yeah.
haratzot? Okay, yeah. Yeah, this is a tricky prayer. And it's something that we've been saying in its original context through the high holidays as part of the Amidah, rather than at the end of our services as we're used to. I was actually just talking about this with a bat mitzvah student who was asking about why do we say this prayer. And there's a few different streams of Judaism tweak the language slightly to make it, to say we have a destiny that's separate from the destiny of other nations, rather than saying we are the only ones who have a destiny. But there's also, what I said to this bat mitzvah student was particularly the second paragraph of the Amidah, which has this idea of there will come a time when everyone agrees that our way is the right way and they'll all do things our way. That part of the reason we say that silently or say it quietly in a lot of contexts is there were contexts in Jewish history where that was dangerous to say. And there are times like now when that's not necessarily where we are, of this idea of we are going to be proved right and everyone else is going to be proved wrong. We're taught that at Sinai, God spoke to each person. At Sinai it says, and the people witnessed the voices, like there's plural voices. Why are there plural voices? God spoke to each person in the voice that they could understand. And so what my father taught me growing up, and what I've learned is from the Talmud, is that the voice went out in the 70 languages to the 70 nations. And so other people have other ways of connecting to the divine that are the way that they can hear. And this is the way that we can hear. And there will come a time when we recognize that we're not praying to different gods. That doesn't mean we're right and they're wrong. It means we're right, and it's very possible they're also right. Other questions?
As long
Yeah.
as I have the mic.
Please.
During the Amidah, if it's during the day, we do Sim Shalom. In the evening, we do Shalom Rav.
Yeah.
Why?
It's a good question. I am actually gonna pull up the Amidah, just because it's helpful to have the language in front of us. So we've got the silent Amidah is probably the best place for
I was
it.
going to say page 218 has both of them.
Perfect, thank you. Always good to have page callers in the audience. Okay, so in the morning or the afternoon, we talk about giving peace to the world, sim shalom ba'olam, and at night we say shalom rav, grant abundant peace. One thing that I've noticed, and this I've noticed, I have not found that there are other sources that are like, yes, this is a thing. So this could just be me being weird. But the prayers we say in the morning have a lot more focus on how God is out in the world. And the prayers we say at night are asking for more specific love and comfort. And I think that that's speaking to the way at night we sort of close in a little more, we lock our doors, we get ready for bed, that it's focusing on the personal and the vulnerable. And at night, we can talk about the world and we can talk about what we hope will happen in the world, but we're shutting things down for the evening. We want just comfort. Yeah. Please, yeah. Other questions? Well, that was easy. I wish we had like a laptop or something so we could see if there are questions online. Yeah. So do we want, oh, please. Yeah.
What is it about Zachrenu that the ark gets closed for that during the repetition?
Why do we close the ark for Zachrenu, remember us?
Chalk up one for the congregation.
Yeah, no, these are tough questions. I don't know if there is a reason for it beyond like, there's a limit to how long you can ask people to stand. But
It's not that you get to sit, it's just that the ark gets closed.
Right.
And then it gets opened again.
yeah,
So there must be something in those words that we need
yeah.
protection from the magic of the ark. I don't know.
I don't know. It could actually be, if we are right here, we don't need to be remembered. And at some point, the ark is going to be closed, and we're asking God to remember us for the coming year. And so there's a lot of pleas that we're making before the sovereign, but we're also asking for God to do a little work to remember us. But I don't know that I've ever read something about it, and I'm actually really curious now. So I think after the holiday, I'm going to flip through the Shulchan Aruch, because like either the Shulchan Aruch or Maimonides is going to have something to say about that. Yeah, so thank you for stumping the rabbi. Well done. Go for it.
This is a little more open kind of question, but are there, it's sort of two parts, and the first part is, are there particular PU team for the holidays that particularly resonate with you? And kind of the second part is, are there PU team that are sort of not the sort of the top level of, you know, the ones that we usually do, that you kind of would like to bring back in?
Ooh, that's a good question. So are there PU team that I particularly love, either that we do or that I wish we did? One I brought in, which was God, where can I find you, and where can I not find you? Because I think that this is something that we live so much throughout our lives, is there are times when God feels present everywhere and we are surrounded by God's miracles, and then there are times when we feel very alone. And how do we hold on to a sense of intimacy while holding both of those realities? Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the main one that stands out to me. But we've got such beautiful pew team throughout the service. The medieval poets just put their best work into this. Yeah.
For the longest time on Shabbat, the ark would be opened for Aleinu, and then it stopped. Is there a special reason why it was open, or a reason why it doesn't matter anymore?
So you're saying that here there was a tradition on a regular Shabbat of having the ark open for Aleinu?
Not necessarily here.
Okay.
I don't think it was here. No, where
Okay.
I came from, it was.
Okay.
And I often wondered why some temples do it and some don't. I mean, if there's any kind of halachic reason for it, or
I think it comes back to the original source of the Aleinu, of this was originally something that went on in the Amidah on the high holidays, and it's a moment of being incredibly close to God. There are several points in our service where we are pleading with God, why don't you act in the world the way that you acted for our ancestors? Like the repetition of Tivnei Chomot Yerushalayim, asking for Jerusalem to be rebuilt. And it feels like going back to what Marvin was saying earlier, what we get in the Aleinu is this this plea of, why are you waiting, God? When does this come to its culmination? So I can see wanting to open the ark to make that plea directly to God for the Messiah, for the time to come. Yeah. Sure. Anything? Oh, one in the back.
Why we not have include in our prayer Ana Bekoa?
So why don't we include Ana Bakoach, which is to loosen the knots that tie us up? I actually really like this prayer. It's a bit of a choice on a regular Friday night when we're doing Kabbalat Shabbat. There's the tension of we can't do all of the prayers. We just don't have the bandwidth for it. And should the service be more the same every week so that people know the rhythm of it and they agree to what is there? Or some weeks should we do this, some weeks should we do that, which on the one hand, everyone gets what they want sometimes, but it also means things are shaken up and you're never entirely sure as we go through the service, what am I signing on for? What ride am I going on? So that's a challenge for me as a prayer leader, honestly. Particularly when we do Kabbalat Shabbat in person, it's lovely to do some of those prayers that we don't do the rest of the time, because the fact that we're here and often we've got some sort of special event, people already are cued into this is not going to be the rhythm that they're used to, and so people are not like, wait, why do we do this and not that? So yeah, that's the reasoning behind it. It's I'll just say it's a dance as Shliach Tzibur, as the person who is holding everyone else's prayers, especially online, where other people don't get to join in. I want to make sure that I'm holding other people's prayers in trust, and that I'm not just, oh, I think this would be fun right now, let's do this. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Going once, going twice. Sold for 2 zuzim. Wrong holiday. There you go. There you go. Sorry that my throat's just super dry. I can't imagine why. Yeah, if there are no further questions, yeah?
Your thoughts on the Jewish concept of heaven and hell?
Ooh, oh man, oh man. The Jewish concept of heaven and hell, I'll give an experience that I had when I was like 7, where I was in public school, and the teacher was talking about heaven with clouds and harps and angels, and then turned to me and said, and the Jews believe something similar, right? And I'm 7, so I was like, yes. And I went home and asked my dad, and he was like, no, we don't that's not like something that we're that invested in. What he told me was, we don't pretend to know what's next. We have no idea what's next. And we have, as we've come into contact with other cultures that believe in an afterlife and put a lot of emphasis of their religion on what happens here on earth doesn't matter. What matters is what happens there, and so we're going to describe that in detail and have you invest in it. If you look at Torah, if you look at Mishnah, like almost into the later parts of the Talmud, the focus is on what you're doing here. And Olam Haba exists, but we have no idea what it looks like. So, holding on to that and holding on to the idea of we can't know what's next, and therefore what we do here matters all the more because it's all we know. It's not about scoring points for whatever's next. It's because we have no idea what's next, and therefore what we do here has such high stakes because it's the sum of our experience. Yeah. All right. Cool. So, if that is it, it has been lovely. I am going to get that response for the Shulchan Aruch or from Maimonides, whichever of them will tell me, because I'm sure one of them will have some excellent details. And wishing you a meaningful end of the fast. Oh, one more? Okay.
I got the, from my 7-year-old grandson, I got the, is it real question. The context was, I was telling him, we were learning about Sukkot, and I was talking about the Jews coming out of the pyramids and The little thing we were watching talked about living in Sukkot after that, and I said, these are this is our, the story. And he said, is the story true? And I'm just curious how you...
Right,
Where do you
so
start?
the Exodus from Egypt, is it true? And more broadly, is Torah true? This is, not a small question. So we seem to have pieces of this, and it's hard to know, okay, what is or isn't affirmed by other cultures? Is that the measure of what we're doing, especially given that until about 200 years ago, how history was written was very different. If you had success, it showed that God was on your side, and all sorts of moral virtues were ascribed to you. And if you were defeated, it showed that God was not on your side, and all sorts of flaws were ascribed to you. So, we don't know with some of this stuff, okay, this is what's been passed down by us, by others. How accurate is all of it, and how do we know? But there, one of the joys of biblical archaeology is we keep finding these nuggets that say, this person actually existed. This, this was a custom in this part, everything from the daughters of Zelophehad, who are mentioned at the end of the book of Numbers as coming to Moses and saying, our father died, he didn't, he wasn't part of Korach's rebellion, it's not his fault that he doesn't have any male heirs, we need to inherit our father's portion of the land. The daughters who are named were clan territories in the land. These women passed down property to their descendants and thriving economic regions. So these women clearly existed, and this part of the story, this is our understanding of what happened. And of course, some of it is also going to be a bit of a game of telephone. Anyone who has tried to reconstruct with their spouse or with their siblings, how did you meet your spouse? We dined at 9, it was at 8. I was on time, you were late. Ah, yes, I remember it well. So, how much more so over thousands of years, 12 tribes, all of that. So to the extent that we can prove these things, some pieces of it we can prove, some pieces of it we can't prove, to the extent to which these things are true because this is the story we tell about ourselves and this is how we get meaning in the world. This is absolutely true. Yeah. All right. Excellent. It's okay. It's Yom Kippur afternoon. All of us are tiny, exhausted. But it's a joy to answer questions, and here's hoping that next year we have even more exciting questions, and that we just have a good year ahead of being together in community. Yeah. All right.
Mincha starts at 5.
Yes, Mincha starts at 5. You have a whole hour to nap.